studio audience was buzzing with anticipation as the lights dimmed and the opening theme of Kelly Clarkson's daytime show filled the air, signaling the arrival of yet another electric segment. The guest that day was none other than the multi-talented icon Jennifer Lopez, known not only for her musical prowess, but also her bold attitude and unapologetic presence. From the moment she stepped onto the set, wearing a shimmering silver outfit that dazzled under the stage lights, the energy shifted. Kelly greeted her with a big smile and an outstretched hand, which Jennifer returned with a cool nod, her sunglasses still perched firmly on her face. Right away, there was a tension in the air that couldn't be ignored, a kind of silent contest between two powerhouse women who each commanded a stage in their own right. The small talk began innocently enough, with Kelly praising Jennifer's latest movie and her recent Vegas performances, but Jennifer's responses were clipped, sometimes deflective, other times tinged with sarcasm. When Kelly tried steering the conversation toward the challenges of balancing fame and motherhood, Jennifer's posture stiffened slightly and her tone sharpened. "I've been doing this longer than most people have even been dreaming about it," she said with a tight smile. "So I think I've earned the right to define that balance on my own terms." The studio audience chuckled politely, unsure whether they were witnessing playful banter or the beginnings of a subtle confrontation. Kelly tried to soften the mood with a joke, but Jennifer didn't laugh, her lips barely twitching before she reached for the water bottle beside her seat. The air felt heavier now, as if everyone from the cameramen to the viewers at home were leaning forward, waiting for either a reconciliation or a full-blown collision. Kelly, ever the professional, kept her smile intact, though her eyes flickered with unease as she glanced toward her producer off camera. It was clear she was trying to steer the segment back into safer territory. But Jennifer leaned forward in her chair, folding her arms as if bracing for a storm. "Let's not pretend the industry hasn't tried to box me in," she said, her voice sharper now, unmistakably laced with defiance. "People like you, with your whole aw shucks America's sweetheart image, they get treated differently. You sing a breakup song, and you're brave. I do it, and I'm called bitter." The audience audibly reacted, gasps, and a few nervous chuckles cutting through the tension like a blade. Kelly's brows raised in visible surprise, her tone still, polite but now laced with warning. "I think we've both faced our share of criticism," she replied carefully, "and I've never said anything about you that wasn't respectful." Jennifer smirked, removing her sunglasses with slow, deliberate flair. "Respectful? You sure about that? Maybe not directly, but I hear the shade." That's when the temperature dropped. Kelly sat up straighter, her smile fading into something more resolute. "Look, Jennifer, this isn't that kind of show. If you have something you want to say it. But I'm not here to play some back-and-forth drama game. I invited you on because I respect your work and thought we could have a good conversation." Jennifer leaned back, tapping her perfectly manicured nails on the armrest, her eyes locked on Kelly with a defiant gleam. "Then maybe you should have done your research better before bringing up things you don't understand." The crowd went silent. Kelly inhaled slowly, visibly restraining her emotions. "I didn't bring anything up that wasn't public knowledge. Gosh. But if you feel like that's crossing a line, then maybe this isn't the right place for you." Jennifer tilted her head, the silence between them stretching longer than was comfortable. The tension had transformed into something electric. And everyone knew it, the audience, the crew, even the band, which had subtly stopped their background fill. Jennifer crossed her legs slowly, her gaze unflinching. "Maybe it's not," she said coolly, her tone dismissive. Kelly didn't respond. She didn't have to. The confrontation had taken a life of its own. Jennifer rose from her chair with calculated calm, brushing down her sleek pantsuit as if signaling the end of a meeting she no longer found worth her time. Her movements were slow but deliberate, every gesture screaming control, even as the storm behind her eyes brewed violently. Kelly remained seated, hands clasped in her lap, her face unreadable, equal parts disappointment and restraint. The silence stretched, suffocating the room. A stagehand shifted behind the cameras, unsure whether to intervene. Then Jennifer finally broke the pause, adjusting her mic pack with a sarcastic laugh. "You know, I thought this was going to be different," she said, not looking at Kelly anymore. but directing her words to no one and everyone at once. I thought maybe, for once, it wasn't going to be about pushing buttons and pretending it's all rainbows and empowerment until someone actually speaks their truth. Her voice didn't crack, but the strain was evident, like every word had been sharpened before being spoken. You want me to play the game? Smile, dance, talk about my perfume line? Pretend like everything's perfect? Her eyes swept across the audience now, daring anyone to answer. Oh, I'm not going to do that, Kelly exhaled, still calm, but clearly holding something back. Nobody's asking you to pretend, Jennifer, she said evenly.
But
There's a way to speak your truth without tearing other people down. The show isn't a battlefield, was the last spark. Jennifer's mouth tightened, her jaw flexing, and without another word, she turned sharply toward the backstage exit. Her heels echoed dramatically against the studio floor, each step louder than the last as the audience watched, stunned. Camera tried to follow her, but a producer's voice quickly called to cut. Kelly remained still, clearly shaken, her fingers tapping silently against her coffee mug. For a few moments, no one moved. Then, softly, the audience began to clap, not in mockery or excitement, but in confused support for Kelly's composure, for the host who had just withstood a celebrity storm live on daytime television. Backstage. Jennifer Lopez moved like a storm, silent, swift, but undeniably electric. Assistants scattered at the sight of her, some avoiding eye contact, others trying to gauge whether to offer help or simply vanish. She unhooked the mic pack from her waistband with a snap, shoving it into the startled hands of a sound tech who hadn't even asked. The hallway echoed with tension as a nearby door slammed. One of the show's producers, a well-dressed woman with a headset and clipboard, approached cautiously, her voice even. Jennifer, we'd really love to clear the air, if you'd be open to just a moment off camera. But Jennifer didn't stop walking. Nope, I don't need to be gaslit in a green room either, she said, adjusting her coat as she headed straight toward the exit. Let Kelly spin it her way. It's what she does. The producer stood frozen for a moment, then tapped her headset. She's leaving. Do we call the driver? A voice buzzed back in response, already outside. Meanwhile, back on stage, the atmosphere was strained, but slowly recalibrating. Kelly had taken a moment during the commercial break to gather herself. Her team hovered discreetly near the edge of the set, offering her bottled water, tissues, or just silent support. She took none of it. When cameras rolled again, her expression was poised but unmistakably different. Well, folks, she began, her voice softer than usual. We had a moment, a real one. I know this show is usually filled with laughter and music and stories of triumph, but today, you saw the other side of that. And that's okay. The audience responded with quiet nods and murmurs, some even tearing up. I started this show to have real conversations, and sometimes they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they hurt. She glanced off stage, then back into the camera. But it matters. It matters that we see each other even when it's messy. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous, but it was meaningful. It was for vulnerability. It was for grace under fire. And somewhere outside, Jennifer Lopez sat in the back of a waiting SUV, staring out the tinted window, her phone untouched in her lap. The streetlights reflected softly on her face as her eyes blinked away something. Unspoken anger, perhaps. Or maybe regret? Asterisk. The SUV glided quietly through the city streets, tinted windows sealing Jennifer Lopez away from the world as her mind replayed the moments of the interview. Like a looped chorus she couldn't mute. Her hands were folded in her lap, perfectly still. Yet her jaw tensed every few seconds, betraying the emotional turbulence that words couldn't reach. In the quiet of the car, her assistant finally spoke up from the seat beside her, voice barely above a whisper. You want to release a statement? Jennifer didn't respond immediately. She just stared out at the passing lights, watching people on sidewalks who would never know the weight of that day. Finally, she exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. No, she said softly, her voice not angry anymore, but tired. It breathed. Meanwhile, the media machine had already spun into motion. Clips of the exchange were being clipped, captioned, and dissected across social platforms. Fans were picking sides, hashtags were trending, opinions flew like wildfire, some praising Jennifer's boundaries, others championing Kelly's composure. On a late-night talk show that evening, the host made a quip about Jenny from the block being too real for daytime TV, earning laughs but also a flood of angry tweets. Back at the Kelly Clarkson Show, producers huddled in conference calls, debating whether to air the unedited footage or release a shortened version with a voiceover explanation. Kelly, however, had already made her choice.
Heard all.
She told them, "If we're going to stand for authenticity, we can't cherry-pick which moments qualify." It was a bold decision, one that could spark backlash, sure start a larger conversation. When the episode finally aired in full, it hit like a cultural meteor. Ratings surged. News outlets picked it up. Mental health professionals praised the rawness of the moment, while publicists winced at the lack of spin. Jennifer watched it alone in her home a few days later. No entourage, no glam team, just her, a bowl of half-eaten popcorn, and the weight of seeing herself through the public's lens. When the moment came where she stood up and left the stage, she paused it. The image froze on her face mid-turn, caught between resolve and heartbreak. She stared at it for a long while, then she hit play again. Let the world see what it sees. Asterisk as the initial media frenzy began to cool. Both Kelly Clarkson and Jennifer Lopez found themselves navigating the aftermath with more introspection than anticipated. For Jennifer, the week that followed was a mixture of silence and strategic thinking. Her team was divided. Some urged her to go on record to clarify her side, while others insisted that her silence was its own kind of statement. She, however, chose something unexpected. Instead of the usual press run or a defensive post on social media, Jennifer sat down in her own recording studio, no entourage, just her and a mic. Over the course of several nights, she recorded a spoken word piece, laced with subtle piano, that reflected not on the clash itself, but on the deeper themes it revealed. Boundaries, emotional honesty, the cost of constant reinvention. When she released it on her personal website with no fanfare, it quietly went viral, striking a chord with many who had seen themselves in that on-air moment. Meanwhile, Kelly was having her own reckoning. She invited a therapist on the following week's episode not to rehash what had happened, but to openly explore the complexity of emotional triggers, public pressure, and how people respond when they feel cornered. She admitted her part in pushing too hard, framing it not as a mistake, but as a moment of growth. The vulnerability struck a nerve, and audience members both live and at home responded with overwhelming support. Still, the industry took notice. Producers and hosts across networks began reviewing how they approached guests, especially women, especially those whose legacies made them easy targets for tough questions disguised as curiosity. In a private email that later leaked, a rival host wrote, "Maybe it's time we stop expecting women to cry on cue to make good TV." The sentiment echoed across entertainment circles, sparking a minor but noticeable shift. Jennifer and Kelly never publicly reconnected, and perhaps that was for the best. Not every conflict needs a reunion, not every narrative needs a redemption arc, but in their separate ways they had both done something rare in a media culture. Built on spectacle, they allowed discomfort to breathe without rushing to sanitize it. In doing so, they reminded the world that even icons bleed a little when they're cut, that grace doesn't always come clean, and that sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do on camera is walk away. Asterisk.